Salam. It's your girl Nicole Banister, aka NIKKI BANZ. Today I'm interviewing Priscillia Kounkou Hoveyda with the Collective for Black Iranians right here on NIKKI BANZ Live. What up, everybody? It is an absolute pleasure to see all of your beautiful, smiling, and shining faces here. Today is Tuesday, and you already know the vibes. We do this every single Tuesday where I interview the most interesting, the most fascinating, the most dynamic artists, entertainers, actors, activists, and entrepreneurs from across the globe. And today, party people, today will not disappoint. And this is going to be an interview that is very near and dear to my heart, because today I'm interviewing Priscillia Kounkou Hoveyda, one of the founders of the Collective for Black Iranians. This is an incredible group of people who are working to have critical conversation and arts and literature at the intersection of Iranian and African heritage. And as you all know, your girl NIKKI BANZ is half Black American, half Iranian. So I'm telling you, this is gonna be dope. Priscillia is also half Black, half Iranian. Oh my gosh, like the conversations, the dialogue, especially with the revolution that's happening in Iran right now, especially with the world becoming more and more cross-cultural by the second. These are exactly the types of conversations that we need to have. So we are coming in hot with an incredible interview today, like we always do on NIKKI BANZ Live. Let go. Okay, I see Niela99 saying, always coming with that great energy, queen. Thank you, merci, appreciate you. Energy for days. You already know that's what you're gonna get with your girl NIKKI BANZ. Shout out to Gio in the building with the African Grassroots Hoops family. Good to see you, fam. I'm gonna bring Priscillia on in just a moment. Just you wait. As you know, I was gonna give a couple shout outs at the beginning of every single episode. Shout out number one, you probably saw your girl NIKKI BANZ was in Zanzibar over the weekend, so it was so amazing to be able to be there and to experience that culture. Zanzibar is one of the really interesting places on the African continent that's at the intersection of Arab culture or sort of Muslim culture and African culture. And I love being in places like that. So places like Morocco, places like Egypt, places like Tanzania, this really unique intersection of, African and sort of Arab culture. And so obviously over the weekend, it was Ramadan. Ramadan Mubarak to all my Muslim brothers and sisters out there. I hope you had a beautiful Eid Mubarak. It was the end of Ramadan. I hope you all celebrated. I hope it was beautiful. So for me to be on a predominantly Muslim island celebrating Eid with friends from Sudan, Muslim friends from Sudan, it was really special. It was a really special moment. So that was great. So if you haven't ever heard of Zanzibar, go look it up. Okay, it's gonna be dope. So it's a great island, great place. So that was such a vibe. And we got another trip coming up soon because your girl NIKKI BANZ can't stay in one place. So check out the socials. Follow me on Instagram at @TheyCallMeBanz. You can watch all my travels all over the world. And make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@NicoleBanister, aka NIKKI BANZ. And if you want to continue to support this work, you want to continue to support these amazing interviews, then you can go to the link in my bio on my page and buy your girl NIKKI BANZ a young coffee to help support my work here. So everybody, I'm so excited. Honestly, I can't even wait. I don't even want to take any more time to do any more intros or anything like that, because this interview today is going to be fire. Like I said, today I'm interviewing Priscillia Kounkou Hoveyda, someone who is an activist, someone who is a human rights lawyer, someone who is a creative, an artist, blending all of her talents and passions and heritage and culture to create so many different things, but in particular, the Collective for Black Iranians, which has really changed the game in terms of really deeply understanding the culture and the heritage of what it means to not even necessarily just be mixed race like I am, to be mixed Black and Iranian, but actual Black Iranians, like actual Black people in Iran, which, to be honest, I didn't even know about until the collective for Black Iranians. So I'm telling you, this is something special. So everybody, I'm not going to waste any more of your time with introductions. We got to get this party started. I'm going to bring Priscillia on right now. Oh wait, one more thing. I know I said I wasn't going to do anything. I'm sorry. Just one more thing. If you're looking at this beautiful hair, I'm going to look at this. Look at this design. Look at this. Look at this dope design on the side of my head. This beautiful long braid. It's so long. It's so gorgeous. Shout out to Lotus Beauty Hair here in Cape Town. They always hook me up. They always make me look fabulous. So thank you, Lotus, for this cool hair. I love it. I love y'all. So I had to come correct for the collective for Black Iranians, okay? Gotta do it right for my people. All right, y'all. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? It's time for NIKKI BANZ Live, y'all. Let's get it. Priscillia, I'm bringing you on right now. Let's go. I wish I had some bandari playing.
Wow. Wow, Nikki, it's so amazing to finally see you, Aziza.
Hello, Aziza.
Salam, Jonam. It's so wonderful to finally meet you.
Oh my gosh.
How are you?
Thank you. I feel the exact same way. Finally, I am so good. I am blessed. Thank you for joining me here today. This is incredible. How are you, Aziza?
I'm good, Azizam. You saw how I rushed to be able to make it to a place with some internet. So I could, so I could connect with you, but I know you're all about that life. So I know you get it.
Girl, literally, sometimes I do these interviews in the dark. You know, we have load shedding here in South Africa. Like, the power just goes out for hours. I'm just sitting here, got my ring light plugged into my computer. Like, I hope it works. I don't know. So thank you. Thank you for making it work.
Of course, anything for you, anything for what you're doing. I love your travels. I love all you're doing. Thank you for just standing at the intersection and being yourself. It's really inspiring.
Thank
Nikki,
you.
Aziz.
And Priscillia,
Hey, Azizon. Omid, Salam, Pesat. Pedram.
We have so many.
ببینید چی پوشیدم بچه ها. امید میفهمید چی دارم میگم. I hope they can hear us.
I know they can. I know they can. We have so many amazing people tuning in. I'm so excited. Literally just hearing you speak in Farsi, I'm like, oh my God.
سلام جیگر. های داری به انگلیسی میگه عزیزم. گمبران دیدی؟ پوشیدمش. I'm talking to Offboy. You see, Offboy is a musician from Bandar Abbas. He is, his name is Omid. He's part of a band called Labyrinth. He's the lead singer with Niaz. Salam Aziz. Look at who's joining. And so it's just so nice. Gambron is Bandar Abbas, so that's his town. I'm repping his town today. Gambron, Omid.
Hey. Oh my God.
Mahdijan, salam, Azizam. Okay, I'll stop talking to the chat because I'm here to talk to you, Nikki.
No, no, it's okay. I was gonna say.
I have ADD, so it's not gonna work.
It's all good. Please do it. And honestly, hearing you speak Farsi, I'm like, oh my God, I need to learn. Like, Priscillia, teach me. I don't speak Farsi. I can only greet. I can only count from 1 to 10. I can only.
Let's do it. Do you want to count? Nah. You know, you have time to learn. You have time to learn. You can still learn now.
I'm gonna learn. I promise. I literally told my mom. I said, Mom, before I die, my mom is a Persian one. My dad is Black American. I said, Mom, before I die, I will learn Farsi. I will get my Iranian passport, and I will go to Iran. I'm gonna do it. We're going. Inshallah. Let's go.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. Shout out to the wellness therapist. Like, just call everyone June. Merci. Yes. Just call everyone June. Priscillia June. Yes.
She got her point.
Literally. I always.
Salam bacheha. Khosh oumadin hammatun. Welcome everyone.
Welcome everyone. Okay, this is amazing. Priscillia, you're here on NIKKI BANZ Live. This is my weekly show where I interview the most incredible people. We have been trying to make this work with you and with the collective for Black Iranians for a long time. So I'm so grateful that we finally made it work. And what's so special is that, like, I've had some amazing Black Iranians on the show. We know Tehran, the amazing comedian who also speaks Farsi, speaks English. I've had him on the show. I've had Tabay Atkins on the show, also Black and Iranian, a chef, a yogi, and other really amazing Iranians across LA. But to have you, Azizam, finally, we can talk all things about your work and this amazing collective. So welcome to NIKKI BANZ Live. The first question that I want to ask you is, because you do so many different types of things, whether it's with the collective, your creative work, you are a trained human rights lawyer. When you introduce yourself to people, where do you even start? There's so many things you could say about yourself.
Honestly, it depends who I'm speaking with. It really depends. Some people I don't say nothing, as you know. with you, I mean, I'm just P, you know, I'm just P, I'm Pris, and I'm not the best for like lives and talks and everything. I'm an anxious human being. So for me to like step over, come forward and share, especially at this intersection, it takes a hell out of me. But I'd say I'm a storyteller, you know. Since I was a kid, I spent a lot of time observing my surroundings and just learning by observation a lot. So I would just record a lot of stuff in my head, visuals, whatever. I couldn't really share much. It's just the way I was. My environment was such, my voice wasn't welcome. So I would build a lot of stories in my head. So I think I'm a storyteller first and foremost. Then yes, I'm a human rights lawyer, which, you know, took me all over the world. And lately, as the last maybe 4 or 5 years, I've really been more so focusing on creating visuals, making stories visible, you know, and just going to places that perhaps folks don't want to get to, so that stories are told or heard. So it's been my focus. It's been stories, truly.
Wow. Wow. And one of the things that I really admire about your storytelling is that you are oftentimes telling the stories of people whose stories are rarely ever heard. Stories of people who rarely ever have a voice. Whether it's the children that you've worked with, you know, children from war communities, or whether it's telling the stories of Black and Iranian people, which have never been told before ever. When was it that you realized that storytelling was your gift?
I mean, you know, I don't know if it's a gift, but it was my way to get by as a kid. It was just by telling myself that what was happening around me was a movie, and it wasn't a fun one, but I just happened to be in it. And then it just came naturally, you know, the need to build stories and take distance from what was going on around me. And then I just stayed in it. I stayed in books, I stayed in scripts, I stayed in just stories. I would look at books wanting to be one of the characters and just become one of the little guys in a book, you know. I like kids' books. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Looking at the little setup and be like, oh, I want to be one of them in there. So it started like this. And then it also started when, you know, I very soon learned that actually my voice was important. That's why it was so often silenced. So it took a minute for me to like make sense of it all. But I think from day one, like stories, what was soothed me. It just soothed me so much, you know. So it came naturally.
Wow. Wow. Okay, I love that it came naturally, and I love what you just said, that your voice is important, and that's why it was so often silenced. Like, hold up, I've gotta give you the horn for that. Like, yo, I mean, talk about speaking truth to power right there. Like, your voice and your story is important, and that's exactly why it was silenced. Talk to us about like this cultural story that you're telling, this story that you're telling about your heritage, about this intersection of being Black and Iranian, when did you start realizing that this was a story that you needed to tell, or that this was something that wasn't commonly spoken about, something that wasn't a story that people were telling regularly?
I mean, again, since since I was a kid, like I was growing up in Tehran, so the capital city, for those not familiar, the capital city of Iran, and in a very controlling patriarchal setting where, my kind didn't have a voice. And I was the only of my kind. It was just me being Black and my sis. So it was just the two of us. I just had my reflection or that of my sister. And then apart from that, it was just silences, like just the impossibility to talk about what was going on.
Wow.
So it was just a lot of like, it's in your head, it's not happening, it's not real. When I would voice things happening at school, at the supermarket, on the street, whatever, at like relatives' place or at friends, at the park, things that would happen to me as a young Black girl, people would tell me I'm crazy as it was happening. It was happening in front of them, but they would say, no, it has nothing to do with you. It's just the way it is. But yet it would happen to me, people who look like me, and it wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, I walled myself in silences because I got really scared of the power of my words and the power of my stories. I got really scared of, I had a lot of fear around that oppression, that doesn't allow me to speak. And it's real. It's so real when you live in a system that's, when you live in a country where the state controls what you think, what you say, and how you say it. And then people, whether it's in their control or not, whether it's conscious or not, as a result, adopt a certain behavior, in relationship to that. Some respond to censorship by more censorship, by self-censorship, by imposing censorship on others. And then others resist, right? So I was in the latter, I was resisting, but I was pretty much alone. And when I stepped into the diaspora, these conversations also were not welcome. It was all about, we're all the same and there's no difference, even though I knew there was a lot of difference for women, for girls in relationship to men. I knew there was a lot of difference for, Black kids in relationship to non-Black kids. I knew there was a lot of difference for queer kids in relationship to like kids who, present straight. So it didn't really make sense to me, but because everyone was saying this and they were all like older than me, they were all more Iranian than me, big air quotes, so I just gave them, power. I gave their ignorance a lot of power. And then I met others, eventually in my life, I met other Black Iranians, whether they're part Iranian, part Black, or whether they're Black on both parents and Black Iranians on both sides, girls, women, girls, non-binary kids, much later in my life, who also were walled in silences. So, realizing that was a cycle and that everybody was either not conscious about the reality of our condition, or because of distance, because of not being Black, because of lack of consciousness about what it means to be Black in the Iranian context. And so we just listen to what Bomon and Bobo tell us, but perhaps they aren't Black, so how would they know? So, it was all this cacophony was driving me absolutely nuts.
Wow.
To sit in LA, with non-Black Iranian Americans telling me about Qajar era, like there wasn't slavery that had happened, and like I wasn't a Black woman who's also Iranian sitting in front of them, like that, I got tired of the pain related to that, and I got tired of the pain that ignorance causes. And I didn't understand why I should center people's ignorance and just have people tell to me, I didn't know, and me just be like, oh, it's okay, you didn't know, let me be your teacher. Instead of that, it was like, well, if you don't know, why don't you give me a second and stop centering yourself and let folks who have something to say come forward. So, it started this way, but as everything everywhere, especially in the Iranian community as well, it was an uphill battle. It still is an uphill battle to find, to make space for who we are, to make space for our diversity, is something that I think as an Iranian community, we still don't know how, you know, a lot of us still don't want to allow it. So, I mean, starting with those in power, right? And then, of course, trickling down to a lot of other folks in a lot of different forms. So, yeah, I don't even know if I'm still answering your question, Nikki. Forgive me. I do a lot of that.
You know what? Honestly, I was literally just sitting here being like, I could look whatever you say, I could literally just sit here and listen to it for hours. I'm already
Wait, let me
like,
call my partner so you tell him that.
I'll tell him, honestly. Like, I'm literally just sitting here being like, girl, you better preach, you better tell this story, you better raise this awareness, because there are so many people who, like you said, have no idea at all. And to be othered like that, and to be told that, you know, what you're thinking isn't real, or what's happening to you it doesn't mean anything, to have that happen by your own community, that hits different, right? That hits different when it's your own people who are like, no, you're not really experiencing that thing. No, that's not really happening. And you live, like you said, we live at this intersection of two very interesting and very powerful and very dynamic communities who have a lot of pride. And so when you have someone who comes in like us, who shifts the perspective, someone who challenges the narrative that's been told historically about one half of our people, the other half of our people, a lot of people get very hesitant to sort of even want to engage in the dialogue or give you that platform to speak, like you said. And I think this is why I feel like the collective for Black Iranians is so critical. And Priscillia, I have to tell you straight up, I mean, growing up, for me, I grew up in the United States, Iranian mother, Black American dad. I was always fully very aware of my mixed heritage and my mixed identity, but I didn't know anybody else who looked like me. But, you know, it's the United States, so everyone's from everywhere. So, you know, we were just like, okay, cool, whatever. You're Black, Iranian, okay, you're Chinese, you're Indian, like whatever, right? And it wasn't really until I was like in university that I started to think, like, are there other Black and Iranian people specifically? Does that community exist? And the only people I ever found were like mixed. And it wasn't until the collective that I even understood that there were Black people in Iran. I remember I told my mom, I was like, Mama June, did you know that there were, I was like, there's this thing, the collective for Black Iranians, they're on Instagram. They say there's Black people in Iran, in the south of Iran. She was like, no, there's not. I was like, I'm telling you, look at this. I was like, you read Farsi, I don't read Farsi. Look, read, you know? and truly, your collective did that for me. You introduced me to a community that I'm a part of that I didn't even know existed. And I'm so grateful. So I just have to say that, like, I'm so grateful that you're telling these stories, your story and the story of our people, because so many people just don't even know. So talk to us about how the collective started, because it's one thing to just tell your own story and put it out there for yourself. It's a different thing to join forces with other people and launch an entire community. So how did that start? Why go from just sharing your own story to actually making it a community and making it into this movement that it is today?
Well, Nikki, I mean, first of all, thank you for your intellectual honesty. Seriously, like the way you're saying that you discovered it with the collective and you told your mom and all of this, there is a lot of people who don't have the intellectual courage to actually admit, you know, the fact that they didn't know. And so it makes it harder for us to move forward, you know, to you know, me too, I didn't know, and myself, I'm Black Iranian, you know what I mean? I lived in Tehran, and like a lot of us are not aware of one another. So I think it takes so much intellectual courage to just come and say, you know, I didn't know, or I knew, but I didn't know this, or I kind of knew, but at least just to be, you know, honest with ourselves, especially us Iranians and Black folks and Black Iranian folks, all of us, to be honest with ourselves in that respect, because otherwise we can't move forward.
Right.
You know, often for me, the importance of it being a collective, you know, I could have just started it myself and just gone forward and just did this myself. But to me, the question was much bigger than myself. You know, that erasure, that absence of points of view that emanates from Black folks in Iran, that absence of conversations identity-wise, we barely talk about gender for very obvious reasons. Like, we do live in a dictatorship. But still, outside in the diaspora, when we talk gender, it's in the Iranian community, it's within its own limitations. But then we don't talk about race. You know, in the Iranian reality, race, like falsely, but for a lot of, like, especially older generations, you know, it belongs to a Western reality. Like, conversations around race, baba, this is, you know, برای امریکایاست, this is برای اروپایاست, ربطی به ایرانیا نداره, it has nothing to do with Iranians, we don't have black and white in Iran. Like, this is something you learned from the States. But, you know, I went to the States, I was an adult, I don't know, I was like in my teen years. Like, I had experienced Iran before I've even spoke English. You know, Farsi was my first language. My mother taught me French in Iran as my second language.
Wow.
So English was like, I learned in junior high. So no, it wasn't America who taught me, you know. I mean, it's not America who taught black folks that they're black. Like, this is really crazy to even think of that way. But that's what's projected by non-black folks, you know, in the community, is that, well, these thoughts are just American thoughts. They're Western thoughts. They're European thoughts. So when I'm black in Iran, I'm not black in Iran. Is that what you're saying? You know, it's just, it doesn't make any intellectual sense. It doesn't make any emotional sense. It doesn't make any sense at all, right? It's not informed. It's just a projection. And so you know, which is based on a lot of things, like, and I don't want to focus on why people see it like this, because I don't want to center ignorance anymore.
Sure.
But, you know, what was really important to me was to make us visible, you know, like, we're hyper visible in Iran. Like, when you walk in Iran as a black woman, you stand the fuck out. Like, people see you. People in Tehran are like, oh, in Siakie, like, in the like, what's going on here? Like, who's that person? Like, why? Like, you know, you see some of these reactions in, like, Asia, like, people pull up phones and they're like, oh my God, a black person, let's make videos. You know, I don't get to see a lot of black folks. So, you know, today in a lot of parts of Iran, I mean, today, for forever, in many parts of Iran, it's been like that. And for me, when I experienced, like, Iran as a kid was early, like, I've only experienced the Islamic Republic. Like, I was a child born after the revolution, that's 79. So the only Iran I've known was that Iran, like the Iran under the Islamic Republic. And under that reality, like, it was always a reaction to my blackness. Like, it's constantly a reaction, you know, and whether it's negative or positive, or can you speak Farsi from my camera? Oh my God, I can't believe, can I touch your hair? It's a reaction. And, you know, others don't get reactions. So why am I getting a reaction? Is my blackness. Oh, but people are not used to it. But I don't want to center that. I want to center my humanity. I want to center the fact that people should know. I want to center the fact that, well, that's a mistake we have a responsibility to fix, so that our kids don't experience their blackness and their Iranian identity under the microscope like that. Because truly, it was constantly that feeling of being watched, and it really has, you know, it really has had an impact on it has an impact on a lot of us mental health, you know, whether we can face it or not, whether we have the privilege to be able to face it.
Right.
You know, like, when you're in it as it's happening, you don't really take the time, like, thinking, okay, all this shit happened to me today, let's sit around tonight and talk about it. You just go through it as it happens. You keep going. You just power through. You just power through. And for me, it's only when I really stepped out. And, you know, then I went back in. Like, I took a risk of going back in, despite my human rights work. I felt the need to go back. I felt the need to connect with black folks in Iran, because I could never connect with my Iranian, you know, my Iranian identity. There was always something missing. There was always something missing. Like, when I would sit with non-black Iranians, even those quote unquote, you know, super conscious, down with the cause and all of that at the BLM events and whatnot, like, they don't know there's black folks in Iran. Like, to me, you're not down with the cause if you don't know there's black folks in Iran as a non-black Iranian, you know, who's like all like fist up in the air and all of that. But then when it comes to my identity, it's just something exotic, you know. You just want to be able to say, I have this friend who's black Iranian. Well, it's like, well, you know, actually there are some really important, significant points of view that were formed as a result of living as Black folks in current Iran, in, you know, the Iran I didn't know before, in the historical also histories and so forth. And it's important to take time and understand what are the racial dynamics of our society. The same way it's important to understand the gender dynamics of our society. But you can't understand fully a society if you don't look at its different layers, you know, the question of, you know, race, the question of gender, the question of age, the question of socioeconomics, question of queer identities, questions of so many different layers of who we are in the Iranian context. It's just washed. You know, it's just whitewashed, yes. And then you step into the diasporic reality, right? So in the case of my mother, for example, she became a refugee, she became, you know, an immigrant, she became, you know, the Iranian brown woman and so forth, but she still had a Black child, you know, like I'm still a Black kid, like all the respect for, you know, our brown sisters and brown brothers and all of that, but it's not the same as being Black in the Iranian reality. It just isn't. Like, my mother was never called, you know, the N-word in the streets of Iran.
Right.
I was my entire childhood. Like, there's not one day, there's not one day, Nikki, including as an adult, that I wasn't called out on the streets. There is not one day. And actually, it's more than one times a day. It's several times a day. I walk by myself on the street the way I am. Obviously, when I go, like last time I went, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to go back until it's free. But, you know, it was same, like it was just constant stares. And then it depends, you know, what's happening on the street where I am in Iran. But the stares are constant. The reaction is always there. And obviously, then you have the interaction with, you know, like anywhere else for us Black folks, with the police. So all of these questions are just erased of Iranian reality because of, you know, those of us who don't want to talk about who we are. And when we talk about race, we talk about nonsense like Aryan race and all that racist, anti-Black, you know, absolutely ignorant. Did I say enough? I never say enough when it comes to that. But, you know, it's also very like Persian pride and, you know, the proud of this, of that, and all of this, you know, it's important to be proud of who we are, but not in the erasure of others, I guess. I hope you can still hear me, because between my connection and your connection, Nikki, are we able to hear each other?
Yes. I can still hear you, and like I said, I mean, you could just talk for the rest of the 30 minutes. Honestly, I mean, like, are you like, is a book in your future? Is a podcast in your future?
Once I, if I can deal with my trauma, then maybe there'll be a book.
Okay, but honestly, you speaking about this trauma and you sharing these experiences, this vulnerability and this transparency is literally like I'm gonna cry right now, because I just feel like you're basically sharing an experience that I feel like so many people have, whether it's in different contexts or not. And so for you to be able to share it so openly and so thoughtfully. No, seriously.
You know, the reason why I do it, Nikki John, is because
truly.
there's so many Black girls and women right now in Iran who are living the way I was living as a kid.
Yes.
And the thought of that keeps me up at night. So that's why I share.
No, literally.
That's why I share.
And it's so interesting for me, because I feel your story so deeply, not obviously from being Black in Iran, because I've never been Black in Iran, right? But being Black in America, right? I get called the N-word walking down the streets of Los Angeles, right? So to feel so out of place in a space that's meant to be your home is so sad. Like, it's so sad. It's so sad. No, truly, and like this is why these are the types of conversations that we have to have. These are why we need to amplify voices like yours and like mine, because there's a whole bunch of other little Black girls, like you said, who are experiencing the exact same thing, or other girls who are brown or whatever, who are literally sitting there being like, is this not my home country? Is this not the place that's meant to be mine, you know, that I'm meant to be from? And then people don't, you know, people don't acknowledge you, and people don't give you the space that you need to be to thrive and to grow. And I'm so grateful that, like, right now we are in this really interesting intersection in the world right now, where for the first time in a long time, voices like ours are being heard in spaces and on platforms that they've never been heard before, that they've never been shared before. So I'm curious to hear from you. I mean, obviously, I still want to talk about what's happening in Iran right now, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who really, don't understand what's happening contextually as well as you do. I'd love for you to share it for folks who are tuning in. But do you feel hopeful? Do you feel optimistic about the shifting perceptions and perspectives that Iranians are having, that people around the world are having about the lived experience of Black Iranians or about people of color? Or do you feel like we still have quite a long way to go?
Nikki, how can I not feel hopeful when I see your tears? I mean,
Girl.
because they mean so much. Like, I know, Aziz, I know it's lived. Your tears are lived. They're lived experiences. They come from lived experiences in the US. And these lived experiences in America, as a Black woman in America, as an Iranian woman for you in America, as well as a Black Iranian woman for you in America, or, are their experiences in Iran that we haven't heard about enough. Like, there is things that happen to us in Iran, Black men, Black and women, and non-binary. I mean, truly any identities. I want to focus on race right now. Yeah. That's because we never do on Blackness. But it's that things that are happening to kids in Iran, and by kids, I mean it in the general way, Batshera, like we say in Farsi, meaning just people, that we don't even have language to name it in Farsi, We didn't have language for anti-Blackness. We don't have language for, now we see us cities. These are words that with the collective, I really wanted to spend a lot of time speaking to folks in Iran, speaking to folks in the diaspora, to have conversations about, well, we need to have language. We need to own these experiences and name them. And it can be individual, it can be collective, there can be a multitude ways of finding language. But what we shouldn't have is just silence. What we shouldn't be in is an absence of conversation. I'd rather have people disagree and come to me, even though it's really hard, because for someone to come disagree on lived experiences makes it look like this is a debate when it isn't. My humanity is not up for debate. Your humanity is not up for debate. Nobody's humanity is up for debate. But I'd rather have a conversation and a dialogue rather than sit in silence as if we were not real, as if what happens to me and what has happened to me and what is still happening to a lot of Black folks in Iran isn't happening because they're Black. And that's, to me, that's the line I draw. And yes, I'm hopeful. I'm mad hopeful. I'm super hopeful. I'm hopeful, filled with rage and fires hopeful. because I mean, where do I begin? And we've begun already, Nikki, but there are so many incredible Black Iranian women in Iran. Some who are in prison right now because they're not wearing the hijab, because that day they didn't feel like wearing it, and who have been detained, like right now. Like, I'm not talking about hypothesis. Like, this is actual, real situations, It's not a general statement to just lump everyone in it, but it's a real statement. Like, just like you have women in prison in Iran right now, you have Black women, Black Iranian women in prison because they're fighting for change, because they're fighting for the right to be the way they are, just the right to be, just the right to rock these braids, to rock your beautiful hair, and just fucking be, right? Like, for us, last time I rock my braids, I mean, you know how they can be long? You know how our braids can come all the way down below the waist? And, we do what we want with our hair. We know the histories related to our hair. We know that Iran has also histories of chosen migration, like people deciding to move, people deciding for economic reasons, falling in love. You also have stories of African folks, of Black folks in Iran who are already in Iran. You have stories of forced migration with the slave trade in Iran, only abolished in 1929. And the slave trade was not just of Black folks, but included Black folks. As I said, I'm here to center Blackness.
Yes.
Not dilute it, but center it because of the erasure. And all these complexities and much more, right, have created racial dynamics in our society. So, the hope is, for me, is that we're breaking the silences. Like when the collective was launched, you know, prior, for me, it was 4 years in the making in my head. My entire childhood, you know, was just hoping one day to find my reflection, in the sense of finding another Black Iranian kid who would tell me too, who would say that happened to me too. You know, I couldn't find that. I couldn't find someone who would say, oh, I got my hair searched at the airport too. I didn't find that. But I got my hair searched at the fucking airport. I know white women are not getting their hair searched. I know Black women were getting our hair searched in Iran, right? So when people say we're all the same, yeah, we all are. You know, kumbaya, let's have drinks, let's have a party. But it's not real to say that we're all treated the same. Because if we were, then we wouldn't be fighting for freedom anywhere in the world, let alone in Iran, right? So once we agree that we have differences, like, we can talk about them, we can talk about the society issues in reaction to our differences, and then we can move forward, you know, as a society. When I see younger generations today and how they come forward and they're just like, you know, everybody be quiet, like, this is my lived experiences, like, grandma, I love you, but not today. You know, like, situations like this gives me hope, because it's like, yeah, all the love to the grandmas, but let the younger speak now. You know, you've taught us, you've showed us the way, and we're grateful, but it's for us now to push things, you know, to the next level. And when I hear, you know, Iranian moms or dads in the diaspora who hit me up and tell me, you know, like, oh, we don't need to speak about all this, non-Black folks, it's just making people more upset. To me, it's just intellectual cowardice. You know, it's like, you don't want us to open this, but why can't we? Right? Like, it's not even, you're not even Black, so why are you coming at me? Like, we need that space so that we can talk about who we are, and so that we can, you know, build more culture, share more points of view, understand also Iran from a different point of view. Like, we've been hearing the same points of view when it comes to Iran, whether it's on the side of the Islamic Republic or whether it's the opposition. You know, it's always a homogeneous voice of that, or looks on one side and on the other side. And they have different mindsets and different, obviously, opposing ideas and everything. But it's that homogeneous look, you know, and I'm wondering, like, how are we going to get to change if we're not even able to see each other? Right? Like, what are you trying to change if we're not even able to see each other? We have to be able to see each other. We have to be able to see those we don't even know are around. And that means not just say, oh, they're Black Iranians in Iran, you didn't know, but actually add also, well, I wonder how it's been for them.
Right.
Like, can be the same for me. I'm from Mazandarian, I'm green-eyed and I'm blonde. Can be the same for me. I'm a 40-year-old man and I have brown eyes and I have a mustache. Can be the same for me. I'm, you know, I'm upper class or I'm lower class. Like, being able to see one another, you know, is definitely a quality that's easier to develop in a non-dictatorship state.
Sure.
But as a diaspora, we could also do much better. We could also do much better. Like, we could, you know, the spaces that seize me the most are Black spaces. The spaces that have welcomed the collective the most have been Black spaces, have been spaces that come with an intersection. Black Arab spaces, Arabs of African descent, you know, Black Egyptians, Black Americans, you name it, you name it, you name it. There's also been Iranian non-Black, I mean, obviously Black Iranians. I didn't say that, but that was hopefully obvious, in Iran as well. But, you know, for non-Black Iranians, mostly, and I'm speaking diaspora, there's been a lot of sizing up, a lot of I'm doubting what you're saying. Let me check with my scientific research. I'm obviously exaggerating. But instead of empathy and just an open heart and saying, like, you know what, I just want to listen right now. Just empathy has been really hard to come by. And I think, if anything, hopefully the collective can create more empathy for people's differences and stories. And yeah, maybe by pissing people off, by talking about subjects they don't want to hear. But, you know, I mean, you don't change anything by having everybody just, you know, drink the Kool-Aid. So.
Absolutely. And Priscillia, like, I'm so moved by what you're saying. One, about the need for more empathy from within our own communities and from other communities as well. I'm so moved by, you know, the way that you're able to articulate how we need to see one another. You know, it's always been ludicrous to me when people will say like, oh, I don't see race. I'm like, but you must see race. I'm like, but I need you to see race, because if you don't see race, then you are just
You don't see me.
Yeah. You are fundamentally and categorically saying you don't see me or my lived experience, right? And so I'm so moved by you articulating that so well, but I'm also really touched by how you're saying we also need to give people language to talk about these things. And I think the language bit has been something, even for me and for my family, that's been so important. Even using the word trauma. The word trauma is something that I think we as millennials and Gen Z will use the word trauma in relation to work, in relation to race, in relation to our sex, in relation to all of these things, and we'll use it quite freely and quite powerfully. But my mom and dad never grew up talking about their trauma. They had no space to do that. They not only did not have space to do it, they also didn't have the language to do it. So to be able to give folks a language and a lens to be able to talk about, this is my experience as a Black Iranian. This is the reality of an Iranian experience. That's not the homogenous experience, like you mentioned, that's typically shared. This is an opportunity to expand your worldview and to expand your perspective and to have that empathy, to see people for who they really are and what that experience is. And then to center it, like you said, and to allow people to center their own story for once, instead of talking over them or discarding their story, or trying to dig deeper and get receipts and get facts. When really it's like, actually, I have the receipts. Actually, I'm the receipts.
We are the receipts.
We are the receipts. We are the receipt. Literally. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing that. Thank you for articulating that, because again, just telling these stories is we're getting one step closer to having people actually understand. Because if it's on your Instagram and it's on your YouTube and it's on your TV, you can't not hear it. You can't not listen to it anymore. So we're gonna keep blasting. We're gonna keep blasting people with these stories and with this information, because they can't ignore it.
There's so many beautiful stories. I'm learning all the time, you know. I mean, I'm learning all the time, and it's just, there is nothing to actually be afraid of, which is what's very interesting. Folks who say, I don't see race, I don't, as if like they were about to see something dangerous, you know. It was like, what? Actually, if you see race, you would hear my stories. You would be able to know that this happened to me because of my Blackness, and you would be able to stand in solidarity with me instead of pretending it's not happening, right? Or instead of me having to explain to you what's happening because you're too busy pretending you're not seeing it. You know, I grew up in that environment, you know. I grew up in the environment of, we don't see race, us Persians, and, you know, with that voice and stuff. No, it's not that. What you're feeling is not racism. It's just something in your head. Because racism doesn't exist in Iran. You know, we have everything else, but we don't have racism, right? So it's like, okay, we have misogyny, we have all this like things going on in Iran, but we don't have a race issue because, you know, it just doesn't touch us Persians. It's not true. You know, obviously it's not true. It's unfortunately, and, you know, also greatly, like, it's worldwide, right? It's global. We live, I mean, I don't need to tell you this, you already know I'm preaching to the choir, but you know, as I'm talking about learnings, for example, I learned a lot about Bod, the wind. You know, Omid, who joined earlier, I was saying hi to him. I don't know if he's still online or not, but just meeting with him and sitting with him and listening to his stories from Bandar Abbas. Again, Gambron representing. But, you know, his stories from the South, and listening to his relationship with music, to his relationship with Africa, with his African heritage. Listening to his relationship with ancient African traditional healing ceremonies called Zor, where, you know, it's a ceremony that brings the wind out of you. Once you've been to the doctor, you've been to the therapist, something, you're not feeling well, nothing can really fix you, then a lot of, you know, Afro-Iranians believe that you go to Maman Zor or Baba Zor, and then they take the wind out of you. And it's a ceremony with music and drums, and, you know, like drums that look like talking drums from, you know, from Africa, from Efira. And like when I met him, he just told me, you have a lot of wind in you. That means you have a lot of ancestors in you who are just like, you know, let us play some music and see what happens. I was a bit concerned that I would just, but you know, I have deep beliefs in this, and you can feel, I mean, the intersection is right there. You know, the intersection is right there. It's alive, and it's all Iranian, all African, all Black. Now, of course, you have these beautiful stories, these musical stories, and if you may, like you do have non-Black Iranians who have a particular vested interest in showing this, but then that's the only thing we'll see is kind of the traditional iteration of being Black and Iranian, right? So if you read books from like Simin Danishvar, for example, who's one of the very respected Iranian feminist novelists of a long time ago, and one of the few ones who has characters who are Black, they lack agency. Her characters, her Black characters, lack agency. They usually don't have a name. They don't even have a name, while all the other characters have a name. All this come from an absence of dialogue, right? So you're not Black yourself. You're writing about someone that you only know from a distance. You were never able to actually understand the realities of that person because you never were able to even wonder what are the realities of that person because they're Black, because you forbid yourself to see race, which we know, you know. I mean, even if you forbid yourself to see race, you live in society, you see what's happening, you know? So you know, all these, so you have movies, like we had this movie made in the, I think, early 90s called Boshu. People always tell me, what do you think of Boshu? What do you think of Boshu? Like, it's like they've seen one movie with a Black person that's in Farsi, you know, and I get the question. And they think they're the first one asking me the question, which is super interesting. Folks in general, you know, and of course I've seen the movie. I cried watching the movie. I was so triggered. But, you know, it centers the gaze. I mean, if you haven't seen it, I don't, you know, I think it's beautifully made, whatever. I don't want to disrespect, you know, Iranian canon filmmaking. But I think the point of view of Black people would have been very helpful in making that movie more humanizing from the perspective of the little Black kid who's in the story. You know, so there is missed opportunities like that as a community because we're so afraid, or we assume we know what the other is feeling because we pretend to all be the same, right? That like that lack of awareness of one another makes us make entire movies completely missing on the point of view and just bringing all that gaze, you know. Actually, the title of the movie is The Stranger. So whose gaze is it? Right. Who's looking at me and seeing me as a stranger, seeing that Black kid in the story as a stranger? It's non-Black folks, right? Because as far as we're concerned, as far as Afro-Iranians are concerned, they're not strangers, they're not foreigners, they're Iranian, they're Black folks, they're of African descent. Like, you know, people call me foreigner all the time in Iran, Khariji, whether my Farsi was more fluent than now because I was going to the schools and whatnot, or not. You know, I would always be called a Khariji. And I knew that that was a reaction to my skin because that was the only identifier that stood me out. And I knew this as a child, 7-year-old kid, 6-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid, 9, 10. Even though nobody would come and tell you this is what's happening, you know, you have the power of deduction that hopefully we're all, you know, all have, that you can use or not use. And you can see, okay, this is happening to me, but it's not happening to the 20 other kids in this class. This is happening to me at the airport, but it's not happening to the 5 women in front of me, and they're not Black, and these 20 kids are not Black. So you don't need to, you know, grow up in like the US to experience anti-Blackness, right? Or to experience, you know, being stopped by the police on the streets because you stand out so much that they actually wonder if you really are not a foreigner. Like, imagine the perception of being seen as a foreigner in the Iranian Basiji, in the police mindset. When they see someone like me, immediately they're thinking America. I don't even have an American passport. Right. Which is just like, wow. They immediately see that. I may have been born and raised. I may have been living there for 4 years, like so many of my friends, not my case, but like so many people I know. Unless it's your town and everybody knows you, the perception with Blackness in Iran is you're a foreigner. Something that's outside of Iranian reality, of Iranian identity, of Iranian, you know, points of view, which is not true. We're very much a part of it. Of course, you go down south, you'll see it more, but you still have the absence of dialogue. So the consciousness, you may see more Black folks, but in absence of dialogue, in absence of free discourse, identity formation really struggles. Identity formation is under the thumb of those in power, right? And in Iran, those in power already told everybody, we're all the same. We're all like, nobody can come and make any differences. Actually, in the eyes of the government, saying you're black, you're white, you're this is an ideology, is creating division. So something like the collective, is frowned upon, probably shut down, can get in a lot of trouble in Iran for having these conversations.
Right.
So it's a complicated space, Nikki, that's, I've been in my whole life, but I've avoided my whole life until I could no longer avoid it, until it was just so tormenting me in so many ways. My stories, but also the stories, and especially the stories of other women, other men, black folks in Iran who, didn't get the opportunity to expand because they could never leave Iran. And until I met them, for many of them, it was our first time, just like it was my first time for me as well, when it was my first time, even talking about what was happening to us because of our race.
Right.
Like, I remember sitting with so many other black women in the South, just having tea, and maybe not just tea, but just drinking and chatting. Norman, Azizam, Salam, Pesad. Sorry. And I'm just talking to the chat. I have to stop doing this.
We love the chat. We love the chat. Thank you to the chat. It's all good.
But, just sitting with them and just being like, well, I just got here and that happened to me on the street. The police did this and this and that. And then, let's call her Afsane or call her Mariam, whatever name, several women in the room with me being like, oh, but that happens to me all the time. That happens to us all the time. What do you mean? That happens to us all the time. Manzure chiye? Cheesiness, baba. It happens to us all the time. And I'm like, but it happens to us black women all the time.
Right. It's not happening to those women over there. It's happening to us all the time. And it's now become so normalized in our community that we think it's happening to everyone, but it's not. It's just happening to us.
So, there is that realization moment of being like, yes, it is. But so many other things also are happening to all of us.
Right.
Yes, so many other things are also happening to all of us. But that shouldn't erase the fact that this is happening to us, and it's for others, like if you talk to a lot of black Baluch folks, like they'll tell you from the get-go, like, of course it's racist. It depends. Consciousness in different parts of Iran varies, sadly, we don't have a good understanding or knowledge of our country, whether it's our parents because of separation with the country or exile, or even for those who go back, it's really, they only go back not enough to experience it in a way that teaches you and shows you the reality for people who are in it every time. To go as a black woman speaking the language, understanding the codes in society, all you need is one day. You'll know it's racist as fuck.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, if you don't speak the language, people can call you names all day. You won't know, but you'll feel something. You'll feel like, oh wait, is that because, right? You may have, maybe you went to some parts of the world, like, I don't know, I don't speak Korean, I don't speak, Mandarin or whatever, but I'm sure, like, I've been to Russia and I felt othered in Moscow. I don't speak Russian, but in the Iranian, and people would say there is racism everywhere, blah, 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 blah. Yes, sure. But under the Islamic Republic, in a dictatorship, and in a space where there was a slave trade that was abolished and never any conversations about it, that's specific. And that particular context is important. Those conversations should be centered, especially now, and yet you still don't see them centered. You still don't see them centered.
Right. They're not being centered now, but folks like you, Priscillia, are absolutely changing that. We are changing that, and we're going to keep sharing our stories, and we're going to keep shifting this absence of dialogue, like you said, to make it so that people are having the conversations, and so that our voices aren't silenced anymore, so that the voices of women and black people in Iran and black people everywhere are no longer silenced. And I love what you keep saying about centering this narrative, because in so many dialogues it's not. It's not centered at all. And if it's even brought up at all, it's certainly not centered. So I'm so glad and so grateful that you've centered it here on this show.
Thank you for the opportunity, Nikki. Azizam. Merci, June Delam. You don't know how happy you made me when you sent a message. Others had already hit me up and said, "Oh, do you know Nikki?" Nikki, I said, "No, but it feels like I should know her."
Right, exactly. We've just been following each other for the longest times, and we finally made it happen. And I want to give you the chance, if there's anything else that you want to share, particularly around anyone on this live, maybe people who are meeting you for the first time, people who are meeting the collective for the first time, people are just hearing about Black Iranians in general for the first time. What would you say to people so that they can share our voices and share our stories? What do you say to those people? How can they amplify the Black Iranian narrative?
Well, I think, I want to tell them to give space. I want to ask them to give space. I want to tell them that if we're really about change, then it means we all are ought to do something that makes us uncomfortable. If you're not doing anything that makes you uncomfortable, you're just being performative, and I'm so tired of performativeness. We need radical change. I'm so sick of it. Seriously, I just leave me out of your, mehmun bazi and cherto per harf zadan. I don't have time. I don't, I just don't. Like, look where we're connecting from. I'm in the middle of south of Sierra Leone. You're connecting from Cape Town. You just came back from Zanzibar. I'm about to go see my little ones. Like, I don't have time for performative talk, you either. So I think what I really want to invite folks is, like, it's okay to be uncomfortable for those who aren't Black and didn't know, even for those who are Black and didn't know, for very, like, put the shame aside. There's no reason to be ashamed. The reasons around us not knowing are bigger than ourselves. They're bigger than, you, me, them, individual. It's not anybody's individual fault, but it's our collective responsibility to do something about it. Like, you see what's happening with the Netflix Cleopatra movie, how they portrayed a Black woman to play Cleopatra and how everybody's mad. I don't know if you followed that. Maybe I shouldn't have told you. You're gonna get so mad. You're gonna get so mad and spend probably. But Netflix has this movie Cleopatra, and the lead actress is a Black woman. And you have an Egyptian lawyer, non-Black Egyptian lawyer, going after suing Netflix because they're portraying Cleopatra as Black, and speaking to Black Egyptian folks, Black Egyptian feminist, queer folks who are sharing with me how since Kevin Hart show got canceled for centering Afrocentric narratives, according to the Egyptian government, to Egyptian folks, non-Black Egyptian folks getting mad at Cleopatra being portrayed Black. Like, there is a lot of effort wasted in centering that kind of behavior, and I consider Egypt is an African country, but it's also part of, like, the Swana reality, the Iranian, like, you go to Lebanon, you go to Syria, you go to Afghanistan, you go to Aror, you go to Al Jazeera, Marrakesh, Tunisia, you go to Mauritania, you go to Egypt, you will see how also race is considered as something of the West, right? Where it's like, well, first of all, we're in Africa, so can you please explain this to me?
Thank you. Thank you. Priscillia, I'm literally like, don't even get me started on that, because we're going to talk for another hour.
I know.
About the Egyptians.
But you see how the problem is really wide, right? So we're here in our Iranian reality, and folks are like, no, we don't have this. We Persians. Like, first of all, we're not Persians. There are Persians. There are Afro-Iranians. There are Bakhtiaris. There are Kurdish. There are Turks. We're so rich and diverse. Like, people have to stop with, Iranians is Persian. It's not. It's not. Persian is a group. Like, I'm Persian, yes. I'm Black also.
Yes.
But then I have friends who are Afro-Iranians, and they're not Persians. I have friends who are of Arab descent and Iranian. Nobody's Persian. I have friends who are Iranians, and they're Sunni. They're not Shiite, which is the majority, like the biggest Muslim group in Iran. And those voices, we don't hear from them. Like, I also speak for voices like these ones, Iranians of Arab descent, Kurdish folks, a queer community in Iran. Like, we don't hear about us. We don't hear about these voices. We only hear about a certain looking Persian type. Right. And I'm tired of it. Like, I've been fed this for the longest time. She looks like my mother, and I love my mother. That's fine. No. But I'm tired of it. I know there is more to the story, and I'm here to tell it. And I don't want the white gays to tell it. You know, I don't want the white Iranian gays to come and tell it, because they just found out about us. So I'm not going to trust that either, right? But I want to be able to have Black folks take more, Black Iranian folks come forward, you know, not by, you know, this is a long conversation, Nikki, because then if we talk about, you know, Black Iranian identity from our own perspective, right, without even talking about non-Black Iranian folks, if we just stay in the reality of Black Iranians in Iran, the conversation would be completely different. We would talk about consciousness. We would talk about, you know, self-affirmation. We will talk about hypersexualization for women. We would talk about hypercriminalization for men. Like all these topics we never talk about because we're so busy telling white folks that we hear. Oh, by the way, there's Black folks. Tell us more about being Black in Iran. And it's like, yeah, but there's so many other conversations we need to be having, such as how do we bring change to our conditions in Iran? Because that's not a way to live for us, you know? Like, how do we actually make sure Black women voices in Iran, Black folks' voices in Iran are heard? That what they're experiencing and the discrimination they're living, that's, you know, in society, also by the state, is addressed, is discussed, is acknowledged. Like, we have much more important, I'm glad at least, you know, I'm speaking with you. You didn't ask one question about Haji Firuz. When I'm speaking to folks, they ask me about Haji Firuz, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck about Haji Firuz. Like, if you're still here wondering if it's racist or not, you go and do that. Right. I know when I was a kid and I saw the dude, something broke in me. And I hadn't read any books at the time about these things. I had only lived in Iran. I had lived in France. I was born there, like for a quick second, and then I had lived in Iran, and then I went back to France. And when I saw Haji Firuz for the first time at a party, I didn't feel good. Right. You know, I felt that it was about me. And I know a lot of kids who feel that way. So I don't, you know, the debates about these things, when truly it should be people's point of view and experience that should be centered, you know. So I want to fast forward to the future, Nikki. I want to fast forward to the future.
Even me, Priscillia, even me. I would love to fast forward to a future where all Black people and all people of color and all Black Iranians are understood, loved, celebrated, showcased. I would love to fast forward to that future. But in the meantime, we're going to keep telling these stories because that's all we have for now. And for sure. The only stories that need to be told about us are going to be by us. And we're going to keep it like that. And it's thanks to you, Prsicillia. It's thanks to the Collective for Black Iranians. It's thanks to all the people who are tuning into this live, all the people who are watching the rerun on YouTube. And it's thanks to all of you to watching this, to educating yourselves, to listening to Prsicillia's amazing conversation and dialogue here. I have learned so much for you. Merci, Azizam.
Azizam, you're welcome. There's much, much more in store from the Collective. We're about to pull out culture, music at the intersection. Alex, I see you joined. Dodosh.
Hi, Alex.
And you know, there's going to be much more exciting. It's a huge lift for us. Something we do, you know, because we know we must. But because there's no other way it won't be done. But, you know, we really are looking forward to pushing, you know, vibes that are at the intersection, culture that's at the intersection, points of view that's at the intersection. We want people, when they think Iran, to think Black.
Woo!
You hear me?
Come on now! Come on now! Rewrite the narrative.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it, Priscillia, and I will amplify every single thing that you do. Thank you for everybody who's watching. If you are not following Prsicillia, if you are not following the Collective for Black Iranians, I'm going to need you to do that right now. You can literally go to the top of your screen, hit that little white arrow at the top. You can immediately go follow Prsicillia, go follow at Collective for Black Iranians, educate yourselves, and continue this conversation even beyond. You follow me on Instagram at They Call Me Banz. I will upload this conversation not only onto Instagram but onto YouTube as well, so we can watch it again and again, and we can continue to share these voices. Prsicillia, it's truly been an absolute honor. This is literally just the beginning, and we have so much more to go.
Yes,
but
I'm supposed to come to South Africa, so I'll let you know when I'm visiting. You'll show me around. You'll take me to the Iranian spots.
Yeah, there's one Iranian restaurant in all of South Africa, and it's here in Cape Town. We will go. I will take you. They have.
I can't wait, Ava. I can't wait. I can't wait. Merci, Azizam.
Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful morning, afternoon, evening. This is Priscillia Kounkou Hoveyda here on NIKKI BANZ Live. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you. Support the revolution, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Khodafez.
Khodafez, Azizam.